This is where we take, a whole stack of sources, research our own notes, and really try to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge for you.
Get right to the good stuff.
Exactly. And today, we're plunging into something you probably hear about constantly, but maybe don't fully grasp: processed foods. More specifically, we're going to break down what ultra-processed actually means and look at its surprising, pretty far-reaching effects on your body, especially your gut.
Yeah, the gut connection is fascinating.
It really is. So our mission here is to take insights from places like Harvard Health, Tiny Health, and give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed, hopefully with a few aha moments.
Absolutely.
Think about your last really busy day. Maybe you grabbed a quick snack, a frozen meal, even just, some standard packaged bread.
Yeah.
It's convenient, right? No denying that.
Super convenient. Sometimes it feels necessary.
But what if those choices, the ones that seem so innocent, are quietly triggering changes inside us, affecting everything from, say, energy levels to that incredibly complex ecosystem in your gut?
That's the big question, isn't it? What's really going on?
It is. And we're ready to unpack it. So, processed food. That term gets thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, it's kind of a catch-all sometimes.
It is. But our sources actually give some really clear definitions. They break it down into, a spectrum, really. On one end, you've got unprocessed or minimally processed foods.
The whole foods.
Right. Your fruits, vegetables, lean meats, raw nuts, their vitamins, nutrients are all intact. They're in their natural state or pretty close.
Maybe just washed or chopped or frozen.
Exactly. Minimally altered, removing inedible bits, drying, roasting, freezing, things like that. Think of a carrot, an apple, raw chicken. Simple stuff.
Got it. The basics.
Then you move along the spectrum to just processed foods. So these are changed from their natural state, usually by adding simple things like salt, oil, sugar. Typically only 2 or 3 ingredients listed. Think canned fish or vegetables, maybe fruit and syrup, or even a freshly made loaf of bread from a bakery.
So still relatively simple additions. Sounds pretty benign, doesn't it?
It does sound benign, and that's why the next step is so important to distinguish.
Right. And this is where that Novier classification system comes in handy, the one Tiny Health mentions. It sort of formalizes this, giving us 4 groups. It even adds things like salt and sugar themselves as processed culinary ingredients.
Ah, okay, so it provides a structure.
Yeah, it helps see the hierarchy. And then at the far end, you get the ultra-processed foods, the UPFs.
Okay, so what defines those?
Well, these most likely have many added ingredients. Lots of sugar, salt, fat, often artificial colors, preservatives.
The long ingredients list.
Usually, yeah. And they're often made mostly from substances extracted from whole foods, things like fats, starches, added sugars, hydrogenated fats. Plus, you'll probably find additives like artificial colors, flavors, stabilizers to make them taste good or last longer.
So things like frozen meals, soft drinks.
Exactly. Hot dogs, cold cuts, a lot of fast food, packaged cookies, cakes, salty snacks, that category.
Okay, so we're definitely talking about more than just adding a pinch of salt here.
Oh, absolutely. It's industrial formulation, really.
And speaking of a lot,
Yeah.
here's a statistic that honestly made me pause. According to studies cited by both Harvard and Tiny Health, these ultra-processed foods, they're the main source of calories eaten in the U.S.
The main source.
Yeah.
Wow.
Accounted for nearly 58%, up to maybe even 80% of calories for some people, and almost 90% of added sugars.
80%.
But
That's incredible. That means for many, many people, it's the bulk of their diet.
It really is. It's not just an occasional thing, it's fundamental.
Truly staggering. And it sets the stage for why understanding their impact is so crucial.
Absolutely. So, okay, what does this actually mean for our bodies? Beyond just, the ingredients list, our sources point to some pretty significant findings. Let's start with something tangible. Calories and weight.
Right. There was a really interesting study, quite well known now, in cell metabolism.
The one with the 20 adults.
That's the one. 20 healthy, overweight adults. They started in a clinic, and for 14 days, they ate an ultra-processed diet, and for another 14 days, an unprocessed diet. Crucially, they could eat as much or as little as they wanted from the provided foods.
And what happened?
The key finding was, well, startling. Participants ate about 500 more calories per day when they were on the ultra-processed diet. 500.
Wow. Just naturally, without being told to eat more.
Exactly. It suggests these foods might somehow bypass our normal satiety signals, maybe the texture, the flavor profile, something makes us overeat them, perhaps unconsciously.
And the result on weight.
Pretty clear cut in this group. They gained an average of 2 pounds during the 2 weeks on the UPF diet, and they lost an average of 2 pounds on the unprocessed diet.
That's quite a swing in just 2 weeks.
It is. Now, we have to mention the limitations, of course. It was small, only 20 people, and there was a lot of individual variation. Some gained much more, up to 13 pounds, apparently.
15 pounds. Nice.
Yeah. And being in a clinical setting might change eating habits, too, you know. Boredom or isolation could play a role. It's not quite real life.
Sure.
But the conclusion from the study authors was that limiting UPFs may be an effective strategy for obesity prevention and treatment. That potential for overconsumption is key.
That idea of foods being engineered for overconsumption, that's powerful. And it's not just about weight, is it? There was another big study, I think, in the BMJ, looked at French adults.
Yes, over 100,000 French adults followed for about 5 years. That one looked at broader health outcomes.
And what did it find regarding UPFs?
It strongly suggested that higher consumption of ultra-processed foods was linked to higher risks of cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, and cerebrovascular disease. So issues related to the heart and blood vessels in the brain.
And that was even after accounting for things like fat and sugar content.
That's the critical part. The association remains statistically significant even after they adjusted for the overall nutritional quality of the diet, things like saturated fat, sodium, sugar, fiber.
So it wasn't just that these foods were high in salt or sugar, although they often are. There seemed to be something else going on.
It suggests that, yeah. Now, large observational studies like this, they show associations, not direct cause and effect. We always need to remember that.
Of course, correlation isn't causation.
Right. But when you see a consistent signal like this across large populations, it strongly points towards a link between these types of diets and heart issues.
Okay, so we've got potential impacts on calorie intake, weight, heart health.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the effects might be even broader. Tiny Health seemed to cover a wider range of concerns.
Absolutely. They pulled together research pointing to several other areas. For instance, a 2019 study following U.S. adults for about 20 years found a 31% higher risk of death from any cause for people who frequently ate UPFs.
31% higher risk of all-cause mortality. That's significant.
It really is. And then there are links to a higher risk of chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, obesity, obviously, and even mental health issues like depression.
Depression, that's interesting.
Yeah, and for people with existing inflammatory conditions like ulcerative colitis, there's evidence linking UPFs to more frequent flare-ups. That can have a huge impact on quality of life.
Definitely. And I think you mentioned something about body measurements and signaling.
That's right. People getting most calories from UPFs tend to have higher BMIs, larger waistlines, greater risk of being overweight or obese, and that link seemed particularly strong in women in some studies. And you touched on the signaling. UPFs seem linked to increased inflammation throughout the body that affects your immune system, your energy levels.
Okay.
And regarding appetite, there's a potential link to something called leptin resistance. Leptin is a hormone that signals fullness. If you become resistant, your brain doesn't get that stop eating message properly.
So that could tie back into the overeating finding from the other study.
It could very well be part of the mechanism, yeah, interfering with that crucial gut-brain communication.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And a bit alarming. That foods could actually scramble those internal signals.
It's a complex picture.
And there was one more. For parents or younger listeners, something about allergies.
Yes, that was surprising. Certain common UPF ingredients, things like fructose, sugary drinks, MSG, high-carb UPFs, have been linked in some research to an increased risk of developing asthma, allergic rhinitis, that's hay fever, wheezing, food allergies, and even atopic dermatitis or eczema in children.
Wow. That connection to allergies and asthma is something I hadn't really considered. It really shows how pervasive the potential impact could be.
It really does, starting potentially very early.
Which brings us to the gut microbiome. This is where things get really microscopic, but incredibly important, right? How these foods might affect those trillions of tiny residents in our gut.
Exactly. We saw that study mentioning shifts in adults with metabolic syndrome who ate more UPFs, higher levels of certain bacteria, like Allopregmatella, negative vibacillus, Prevotella, Citarella.
Which aren't generally seen as the friendly guys.
Generally considered less beneficial, yeah. Often associated with inflammation or metabolic issues. They seem to thrive on the kinds of ingredients plentiful in UPFs, potentially crowding out the more beneficial microbes.
So this raises the big question. How do specific ingredients in these UPFs actually impact our gut microbes? Our sources pointed to several culprits, didn't they? It's often about the additives.
It really is. Let's start with preservatives. Their job is obvious, right? Stop food spoiling, extend shelf life. Think about bread that stays soft for weeks.
Right. Seems useful. But the downside for the gut.
Well, lab studies, and again, important qualifier, these are often in vitro or animal studies, not large human trials yet, have shown that common preservatives like sodium bisulfite, sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate, sodium nitrate, they can reduce the populations of beneficial gut bacteria.
Like the good guys, lactobacillus and bifidobacterium.
Exactly. Some of those key players that we know are important for gut health, so preservatives might disrupt that crucial balance.
Okay. What about something really basic, like salt? We need some, but UPFs are famous for being loaded with it.
Yeah, and that high salt intake, very common in these foods, might actually reduce beneficial lactobacillus specifically. Beyond the gut, high salt can also increase inflammatory cells in the body and, as we know, raise blood pressure.
Okay, so salt's a factor. Then there are artificial sweeteners. Lots of people use them thinking they're dodging sugar's bullet.
But they might have their own impact on the gut. Studies have found that sweeteners like sucralose and saccharin can disrupt the microbial balance. Interestingly, some natural alternatives like monk fruit or tagatose seem to have neutral or maybe even beneficial effects in preliminary studies, so not all non-sugar sweeteners are the same.
That's a good distinction. And those bright colors, artificial colors, they're purely for looks, right?
Pretty much, but they might not be biologically inert. Allura Red, which is red dye 40, has been shown in mouse studies to worsen gut inflammation, especially if the exposure is long-term or happens early in life. And other dyes like tartrazine yellow 5 and sunset yellow 6 have also been linked to changes in bacterial growth in lab settings. So yeah, something added just for aesthetics could still have an effect down there.
That's sobering. What about texture? Things like emulsifiers. I know they keep things smooth and stop them separating.
Emulsifiers are a really big area of research right now. They're used everywhere: frozen desserts, spreadable cheeses, sauces, dressings to improve texture and shelf life.
And the impact.
Well, specific ones like carboxymethylcellulose, CMC, polysorbate 80, P80, and Carrageen have been linked in studies, mostly animal models so far, to negative gut effects. Things like increased inflammation, a weakened gut barrier,
Leaky gut.
potentially contributing to that, yeah. And shifts in the types of bacteria present. It seems they might directly interact with the gut lining or the microbes themselves.
Okay, one more. Titanium dioxide, TiO2. That sounds industrial.
It does, doesn't it? It's also known as E171. It's basically a whitening agent. You find it in some flours, creamers, candies, chewing gum.
To make things look whiter.
Exactly. And studies, again, mainly in animals, have raised concerns. In pregnant mice, exposure led to changes in their offspring's gut microbiome and a higher risk of developing colitis or IBD later. It's also been found to worsen symptoms in mice with IBD and detected in the spleens and blood of people with active ulcerative colitis, suggesting it might accumulate. Interestingly, some research suggests TiO2 might not change which microbes are there, but how they behave.
Affecting their function rather than just their numbers?
Potentially, yes. It's a subtle but really important difference in how these additives could be working.
Okay, so, wow. Given all of this research, all these potential impacts, how can you, listening right now, navigate this? Because let's be real, ultra-processed foods are everywhere. They're convenient, often cheap, and frankly, often designed to be delicious.
That's the challenge, isn't it? It's not realistic for most people to avoid them completely.
So where do we start? Identifying them, maybe? What are the obvious ones?
Well, the really obvious ones are things like sodas, sugary fruit drinks. Those are actually the most consumed UPF category in the US and Canada, apparently.
More than snacks.
Seems so. Then fast food, instant noodles, sugary breakfast cereals, most packaged snacks like chips and cookies, candy. Those are usually pretty clearly UPFs.
Okay, the usual suspects.
Yeah.
But you mentioned sneakier ones earlier.
Right. Things that might seem healthier or more basic, like mass-produced packaged bread, many packaged pastries or cakes, hot dogs, sausages, chicken nuggets, some plant-based meat alternatives.
Why those?
It's often down to the additives, the emulsifiers, the preservatives, the artificial flavors or colors used to achieve that specific texture and long shelf life, not necessarily the main ingredients themselves.
That really changes how you look at a standard loaf of supermarket bread, doesn't it?
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
Which leads to reading labels, but that can be confusing too.
Definitely. Because more ingredients doesn't automatically mean bad.
Yeah.
Like if I made a granola bar at home,
Exactly. Your homemade granola bar might have oats, nuts, seeds, dried fruit, honey, spices, maybe a dozen ingredients, but they're all whole or minimally processed, nutrient dense.
And chemical names aren't always scary either.
No. Riboflavin sounds chemical, but it's just vitamin B2. Ascorbic acid is vitamin C. Need context.
So what's the key thing to look for on the label, realistically?
I think it's less about counting ingredients and more about recognizing types of ingredients. Are there lots of things you don't recognize or wouldn't use in your own kitchen? Ingredients like modified starches, hydrogenated oils, protein isolates, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, colors, emulsifiers we talked about, those are hallmarks of ultra-processing.
And also remembering that how much you eat matters.
Absolutely crucial. Many additives are considered safe in small amounts. The potential issue arises when they make up a large proportion of your overall diet, day after day.
So the takeaway isn't necessarily never eat a packaged cookie again.
Not at all. For most people, that's not practical or even desirable. It's more about awareness. Knowledge is power.
Right.
Knowing how these foods and their specific additives might impact your body, your weight, your heart, your gut microbiome, that empowers you to make more informed choices more often.
So what are some practical steps then?
Well, the foundation is trying to make whole or minimally processed foods the base of your diet. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, lean proteins, nuts, seeds. They provide the fiber and nutrients your gut microbes love.
Okay.
But we also have to acknowledge the challenges. Fresh foods aren't always available or affordable for everyone, everywhere. Food deserts are real. Time is limited.
That's a really important point.
It is. But here's an empowering thought. Frozen fruits and vegetables. Canned vegetables. Maybe look for low sodium. Canned fish. They can be just as nutritious as fresh, sometimes even more so because they're picked at peak ripeness. And they're often much more budget-friendly and easier to store long-term.
That's great practical advice. Swapping in frozen berries instead of a sugary cereal, for example.
Simple swaps like that can make a difference over time. Cooking more at home when possible, even simple meals. Reading labels with a bit more understanding. It's about shifting the balance.
Okay. So we've really gone deep today. We've looked at ultra-processed foods, starting with just defining them, that whole spectrum from unprocessed to ultra-processed.
Understanding the categories.
Right. We highlighted how surprisingly common they are in many diets, making up a huge chunk of calories and added sugar.
That prevalence is key.
And then we explored the potential impacts on weight, calorie intake, cardiovascular health, inflammation, even mental health and allergies.
A really wide range of potential effects.
And drilled down into the gut microbiome, looking at how specific additives like preservatives, emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners, colors, even titanium dioxide might be shifting things at a microscopic level.
Yeah, connecting the ingredients to the gut impact.
So wrapping this up, here's a thought to leave you with. Consider this. If the food we choose to eat can not only give us energy and nutrients, but might also actively change the environment and even the behavior of those trillions of organisms living inside our gut, what hidden messages are we sending to our bodies with every bite?
That's a powerful way to put it.
And maybe more importantly, what opportunities are there for each of us to reshape those messages, maybe starting today for better health down the road? Something to think about.